Welcome to Simply Holy, the podcast for people who want to live a joyful life in Christ. I'm Marge Steinhage Fenelon. What is your name? Not the name that's on your birth certificate, the name that God gave you. Have you ever thought about that? God gave you a name. He gave every person created a name. We find that in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49. They call it the suffering servant verses. But there's one line in there. It's actually the first verse of Isaiah chapter 49. And it's, "The Lord called me from birth. From my mother's womb, he gave me my name." He gave me my name. He gave me my name. He gave you your name. How do we know what that name is? It's not the same name that our parents gave us when we were born. It's not the same name that we call ourselves by. Maybe you have a nickname, or some people actually legally change their name. But what is the name that God gave you? And how in the world do we figure out what that is? Well, first, let's look at this beautiful name God gave you. The name he gave you is known only to him. I mean, we don't even know for sure the name that God gave us, but he knows. He's known from time eternal, the name that he was going to give you, the name that he would know you by, and someday, when you reach eternity, you'll know yourself by. That will be revealed to you, your name, the name God gave you. But how do you start to figure that out? Well, I don't think in our lifetime we'll be able to determine the exact name, letter for letter. But we can get a good idea of the meaning of that name. So we can figure out what that name means or the symbolism behind it by looking deeply into ourselves and discovering, looking at, examining, meditating on all of the characteristics and qualities and, yes, even the shortcomings that make us who we are. It's to discover your name. You need to have quiet time with just you and the Lord and talk to him. Think about how you were made. I don't mean created in your mother's womb. That's not what I mean. I mean, how were you made? What did God, what different things, if it were a recipe, what different ingredients did God put into the bowl to make you you? What's in there? When you look in the mirror, you see the whole, to use a bread analogy, you see the whole loaf of bread, all right? You see the finished product. But before that, there was rising of the dough. Before that, there was the kneading of the dough. Before that, there was the mixing the ingredients together. And even before that, there was looking at the recipe, unless you know the recipe by heart. This is it's similar and not. I understand we're not loaves of bread, but this process and how this is all put together, this loaf of bread that is you, it's much the same. The recipe is what God had in mind for you. So God's recipe for the ingredients that would make you you. And just like any recipe is named, then God already had named you. He already had your name in mind. Isn't that amazing? He already had your name in mind, this special name that he has for you that's known only to him. And so if God were a baker, and I don't mean to any way take away from his power and glory. But if God were a baker and he would be creating a recipe and he names the recipe the name he has for you, and then he decides what ingredients are going to go into that bread. What does he need? What does he want in that bread? What kind of flavoring? What kind of texture? All of these things that will make you you. And he pulls them all together in his heavenly mixing bowl. He pulls them all together and he gently stirs them all together. And just like if we're making a yeast bread, a bread that rises, there will be yeast in there. There'll be leaven. The leaven is his grace. So he puts that leavening in the bowl, his grace, his special grace, so that when he gets that recipe, when he gets those ingredients mixed around really well, and the yeast is activated, the leaven that he put in is activated, and he works with it. He works with it, and he kneads it and stretches the dough, and all of it. These are all of the different things in our life that have happened, that are happening now, that make us who we are. So he prepares the dough and kneading it and forming it, and then he lets it rise. And that rising, he puts it in a place that's warm so that it will rise. Well, that warmth is his love. So he puts us, per se, if we were a lump of bread dough, he puts us in a place that is warm, that is abundant in his love, that is a special place he has for us. And he allows that leaven to make the dough rise. And what that is, if you keep going with this analogy, is the leavening is God's grace, and that rising is us becoming who we are. The rising of the dough is you becoming more and more who you are. You entering more and more into yourself. You more and more reflecting the image God has had for you from all eternity. The dough rises. And then he takes that dough, God the baker, he takes that dough and he shapes it and he forms it and he puts it into the pan. And there's going to be a little more rising. So before it's baked, if you know the process for making bread, the dough it rises and then it's kneaded one last time and put in the shape and put into the pan, and then it's let to rise again. So that forming, God works on us a little more. He forms us a little more. He makes us perfectly nice loaves that will go in that pan. And then the bread is baked. Well, I don't know. I like the analogy. I'm just thinking of people in ovens, and that's not a pleasant thought. But don't go there. Don't go there. So the baking, what is that baking? Well, it's again God's grace and his help and all of the things that we need to truly become that loaf of bread, that amazing, fragrant, delicious loaf of bread. So the baking could be the people in your life, could be your experiences along the way. It could be whatever you have done and maybe not done in your life. So it becomes, all of that comes together, and that heat, that warmth, God's grace, his divine providence, all of this makes it possible for you to become that loaf of bread that he intended you to become. And remember that he started with a recipe with a specific name for it. You see, then you become that name more and more. He has a name for you. All of us should be thinking about that every single day. What is my name? What is the name that God has given me? And of course, we need to ask him. We need to pray again and again and again, every day. God, what is the name that you gave me? Who am I really? In your vision, in your providence, who am I really? What ingredients did you put into me? Was it joy? Was it a gift for sharing with others? Was it a talent for communication? Was it the ability to work really hard and apply yourself to any given situation? These are all ingredients that have gone into the recipe. And only you know what they all are. If you search yourself, if you give yourself time, make a list. Make a list of the things about you that you have noticed. Are you a really good friend? Are you a good mother? Or do you at least try to be a good mother? Do you try to be a good father? And the fact that you even are a mother or a father or a brother or a sister or an uncle or an aunt, and all of these are ingredients that go into what made you, that go into your name. So what are they? What do you do for a job? What is your workplace? All of these things, your life circumstances, the responsibilities that you have, the parish you belong to, or that you're looking to belong to. All of these things, these are all ingredients that go into making you who you are and determining, living out the name God has given you. The name that God has given you is specific only to you, and it is a beautiful, amazing name. And I pray that you will be able to discover that name, at least the meaning and the symbol and the mission behind it in your lifetime. I think if you can do that, you will see miracles and so much joy and fulfillment. And I'll be praying for you. I'll be praying for you to be able to discover the name that God has given you. The Lord called me from birth, from my mother's womb. He gave me my name, your name. I'll be praying that you discover that name. Thank you so much for tuning in. I ask you, please, like this podcast, follow my channel. Please check out my website, margefenelon.com. Learn about life coaching with me. I would love to coach you and help you determine how you can live a more fulfilling life, a more joyful life in Christ. I'd love to do that. My life coaching information is there, margefenelon.com. My books, my other podcasts, my itinerary for speaking engagements. You can also learn how to book me for your speaking engagement. All of these things. It's all there at margefenelon.com. My friend, I will be praying for you. Guaranteed. And I ask you, pray for me as well. We all need to pray for each other. Happy name hunting. God bless you.